Ahead of Wednesday's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, there is one thing he and President Biden actually see eye to eye on, that relations between the U.S. and Russia at a low point.
I think he's right. It's a low point, and it depends on how he responds to acting consistent with international norms, which in many cases he has not. As I told him when I was running and when I got elected, before I was sworn in, that I was going to find out whether or not he, in fact, did engage in trying to interfere in our election, that I was going to take a look at whether he was involved in a cybersecurity breach that occurred, et cetera. And if I did, I was going to respond.
It is expected that Biden will take a tough stance with Putin, at least tougher than we saw Donald Trump do as president, especially in Helsinki. A return, if you will, to the Obama-era approach of how to handle Russia, which is described like this in my next guest's new book, which dives into that infamous Obama stare-down amid Russia's interference in 2016. Quote, at 6'1", he towered over the Russian leader, looking down on him and pointing at him as he spoke, "Don't touch the voting machines. Don't touch the data. Stay out of the systems the CIA could see they were trying to get in." The book is called Battle for the Soul, Inside the Democrats' Campaign to Defeat Trump. The man who wrote it, Edward Isaac Dover, joins me now. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic. Isaac, in your book, there is a lot about former President Obama's final meeting with Putin back in 2016. Tell us more about what we didn't hear about that last meeting.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Alicia. What was going on is that was at the G20 meeting in China. They had a pull aside, and it wasn't a formal summit. And Obama took him to task, and they were standing there with a bunch of aides, including Susan Rice at the time, and interpreters. And Putin was doing what Putin tends to do when he's confronted, and he was doing a lot of whataboutism. Oh, yeah, you say we're getting involved in the American elections. Well, what about the Orange Revolution and what you guys were doing in Ukraine? It doesn't go well. And Obama then sends everybody else away. And that's when that scene that you just read happens. And he really tears into him and threatens him with some consequences that they're still top secret exactly what the consequences were. But it seems to be that the Obama officials felt like that may have scared Putin from doing something even worse and even further than just the disinformation that they were going at.
Now we really want to know what those consequences were. You know, a quote from your book stands out particularly when you write, facing no consequences, the Russians went on interfering and getting away with it. Talk to us more about how Trump's soft stance on Russia now connects to Biden needing to make it crystal clear what it is America won't stand for.
Well, look, I mean, one of the big questions that Trump's presidency leaves for the world, and I think for Putin, is Joe Biden's election just a temporary pause, or is it a real shift back to the way things were in the way that America acts in the world stage and the way that America acts with Russia? Putin would, it seems clear, like to believe that America will continue in what he sees as the decline and changing its way of approaching power and changing its way of approaching Russia. Biden is trying to say, as you're pointing out, your guests are pointing out in the last segment, by coming from the G7, from the NATO summit, and then into this meeting with Putin, is trying to say, no, it was the Trump presidency that was the aberration, and we are going to do this again.
Former President Obama tried to talk to world leaders about how to survive Trump's presidency. What was his message to them, and how does that play into how we see President Biden now being welcomed and embraced by world leaders?
One of the things that he said in one of the final international meetings he had after Trump's election was, that he quoted the Mario Cuomo line that there's a lot of that you govern in poetry or you campaign in poetry and govern in prose. And among the people who responded to that was Michelle Bachelet, the president of Chile at the time, said she didn't hear much poetry in the Trump campaigning. So Obama was trying to figure out some way to reassure world leaders. Is reporting in the book about election night when aides say to him when he's putting out his statement, congratulating then President-elect Trump, and they say, do you want to say anything that's going to reassure our allies around the world? And Obama says, I don't know what to say to them. I can't give them reassurance right now. But he tried to do that and tried in his behind-the-scenes way, talking to leaders during the Trump presidency to say, this will pass. This is not who we are. That's the real question that we're facing now, that America's facing for all of us and that America is facing in the world. is America the the world that was embodied by the presidencies we had before Trump and more like the Biden presidency now? Or is it what was embodied by the Trump presidency?
Right. And that's playing out in so many different facets of our national discourse, including the reporting on how Trump used the DOJ to seek out information on opponents. I wonder, from your perspective, does this revelation offer Democrats the urgency that seems to be lacking from some around protecting voting rights?
It would be hard to think what could add more urgency at this point to the questions that are in front of the Democratic Party. It's not like they needed the latest reporting to know that they didn't want Trump and Trump-style Republicans to be back in power. So are the revelations of this week searing? Absolutely. But I wonder whether they are the straw that broke the camel's back or just another straw on the back.